Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner. Got everyone in the building, Bam, Ramses, and Tony. So today we're going to talk about Bayonetta. Bayonetta has been making quite a splash in the competitive scene as of recently for Ultimate. And I guess the first thing we can dive into is I'll just give a quick rundown of the history of Bayo. She doesn't have a lot of history. She's just been in one other game, which is Smash 4, and she was very strong in that game. She was the strongest character. She got nerfed. Still was the strongest character, and she got nerfed pretty hard too. So, yeah, I thought she was ban worthy. I don't know all your guys' opinions. It probably doesn't really matter, but she was ridiculously strong. I feel like she was ban worthy, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, that character was absolutely insane. I mean, we had that's where the meme came from, like just SDI, bro, right? And it's like, yeah, you would have situations you do there, but same token, then like there was just so many. A, they can read it. B, it's like there's situations where it's like you SDI wrong and you just die, right? You just fly off and die, and
you couldn't SDI too much.
Yeah, too much.
Just the right amount, too little.
Just mess up your your wrist and
the amount of physical work you're doing compared to the Bayonetta player was. Dude,
Charles is such a Fox player, bro. Holy
yeah.
Oh, I can break down every reason why it makes sense that like you're literally you're breaking your controllers. Players had to swap out controllers. Like if you played against Bayo consistently in Smash 4, you literally had to buy more controllers than Bayo players unless they played a good amount of Bayos. Like that's not it's physically taxing. I remember practicing SDI on like carpools and just like my hands burning, and I'm like, like this is literally painful to counterplay this character. I think SDI. I think that's more so just like SDI being a horrible mechanic in the game, but that's a whole other topic.
I can see that. No, I'm one of the people who think like Bayo is not the best character in Smash 4. It was like one of the 5 people in the world. But I'm a Sheik believer. I think Sheik has the best matchup spread in Smash 4. But Bayo was definitely the most toxic character in that game for sure. But yeah, like she had a lot of knowledge checks. I think like for Smash 4 standards, now we have like DLC Fighter Pass 2 and like every character is a knowledge check. But like Smash 4 had a lot more like quote unquote fundamental characters, and like Bayo was one of the first like really heavy knowledge check characters. Yeah. There were more, but like because like you guys said, right? Like the SDI, like there's no such thing as too much SDI, but like if you get caught on like the backside. On the upper end of the up B, your SDI is different than when you get caught on the lower backside of the up B, and you get different when it's in the middle on the up, right? Like there's like, and the same for the side B, and then like the forwarders. There's so much shit you have to know just to be able to not die. And then like I'm here in like idealism land where it's like if you know everything, it's not that bad, and like it is not that bad if you know everything, and if you're willing to break your wrist. But like on a human level, it was just a lot. It really was just a lot on a human level. And I think no one can deny that. So they tuned down a lot of her strengths in this game. But what we're still seeing is just like a lot of the damage. So imagine like for people who didn't play Smash 4, imagine like a Bayo combo right now. Imagine that it does the same amount of damage, but if you SDI wrong, you can also die. And that happens like every single time you get picked up by Bayo.
And you just would straight up die from these combos, right? Like we have to take note in terms of like how fair and up air was in that game, where it's just like, you go to the top, you get hit with up air, you die.
Up air killed.
It was up air wasn't a like it was a combo tool, but in different ways. And this one, it's like just they made it an angle in a way where it's just like straight up a combo tool. It's not a killing tool, per se. But
what do you think, Tony? What do you think about Smash 4 Bayo?
Oh, I think that most of the Smash 4 characters were Build-A-Bear workshop puzzles that if you didn't know how the matchup worked, they could just gimmick the shit out of you no matter how good or bad the character was. And a lot of them just had you're going to have this down throw combo. If you have rage, it's going to kill. If you don't have rage, it's never going to kill. And for the most part, I just felt like any character that could kill you at 0 was inherently above the rest of the cast because there was only like a handful of characters that were capable of consistently taking the stock without getting hit first. Mm-hmm. So Bayo was one of them, and I felt like it made her particularly powerful. Actually, before Bayo came out, I felt like Smash 4 Meta Knight was the best character in the game. So it was somewhere between Smash 4 Meta Knight and then Diddy because did he just have the ability to consistently keep you out? And then I felt like Sheik was just inhumanly difficult. So,
Okay.
So the thing about Sheik was always just a matter of how difficult do you think that she is to play? And then most top players just felt that she was inhumanly difficult to play against. And so that was what made her good. But my perspective generally favors proactive gameplay versus reactive gameplay. And so I don't care that she could play around what the opponent could do. So I think Smash 4 Bayo was a very well-designed character in a sense, but that in terms of power level, she did not fit the rest of the game.
It's a good Charles. I'm sorry.
So I have the opposite opinion. So it comes down to the fundamentals of what makes a player, what makes a character well designed. And so one of the fundamental questions of whether a character is well designed includes, to me, how well they implement mechanics. So Charles's conclusion is fundamentally based on the sentence SDI is an inappropriate mechanic for punishing you for a stock, whereas from my perspective, SDI should be, or at its best, SDI is essentially just an extension of rock, paper, scissors. And so I think that if you SDI wrong, your opponent should have the ability to punish you extra hard, and that if you SDI right, you should be able to essentially escape what they're going for. So an example of a system that uses this properly would be the Killer Instinct combo breaker system, in which you basically never lose true control of the RPS, but also you never lose control of your combos if you get the RPS correct. And so I think that was fine for Bayo. I also think that should apply to the rest of the cast. And so they specifically wanted this to apply to the rest of the cast, which we saw in the patch developments. We saw SDI multipliers added to most of the cast. We also saw added to Bayo significantly, just not enough. And so they're similar to things that we have seen patched out in other games. We can see that she did not match what the design philosophy they were going for, especially going into the beginning of Ultimate, which, considering, again, one of the first things we saw for Ultimate before the game was released was Leo on a showcase zero to deathing someone with Bayo, and then her getting absolutely nerfed into the ground by the time the game got released. Yeah.
He saved the world, man.
Sakurai was on stage and just saw everyone.
I remember looking at, seeing Sakurai sad. Like, we were there. Literally watched Sakurai go like this.
I was disappointed in the crowd. I definitely wasn't one of the people booing.
Oh, okay. Look at this guy, Chuck Nasty, dude. What a villain. Hold on. Oh my gosh, dude.
Oh my god. We psychological warfare against Sakurai. We're waging psychological warfare.
I might have started.
It was great.
I might have started it.
This is how you convince a game designer to change it. You show them how you feel about it, either with your wallet or, in that case, the crowd just explicitly told them, I don't like this. They booed it. And that's fine. That's how you're supposed to do it. Now, it might have been a little bit of a cultural shock for him, but it very clearly got it through. And so he readjusted the character. And then so the beginning of Ultimate Bayo, that character was not good. That character was pretty bad. And there's a lot of people who think she was underrated, and she probably was underrated because she was considered bottom tier, if I remember correctly, by common consensus, which she definitely wasn't. But the idea is they then proceeded to buff her over and over and over again until she's where she's at. Now her efficacy is fairly contentious, and you'll hear people say she's still a mid tier. You'll hear people say she's high tier. You even see people say she's top tier, including some, at least one top Bayo and Bloom has, I believe, said that she's top 5, if I remember correctly, or something to that effect. Wow. So pretty divergent opinions. And I think there's a little bit of truth in most of them. So I think that she is still a very powerful character. She is still a very punishing character if you get that RPS wrong. But if you get the RPS right, she doesn't have quite the same level of risk reward that she used to. She does not have the same level of, if she gets neutral combos, she's just going to take your stock. It's specifically if you make hard mistakes, she can still do similarly punishing things to how she could in Smash 4. If you just put down your controller and watch as she fares you off the side blast zone, She's pretty good character. But
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about SDIing Ultimate Bayo's combos and like how that affects her and her balance?
I would say, as far as her combos, in my eyes, I feel like it's huge. I remember when I first picked up Bayo for Ultimate, and I know a lot of people freaked out. I really actually liked how she played because there were more Ultimate mechanics. I mean, just more global mechanics, plus the way that she works, and she wasn't as overbearing. So I really found that enjoyable. For Bayo, like, yeah, I really like her how she fits in ultimates and mechanics right now. But one of the interesting thing was I was able to play a ton of people early on, and I was like, man, this is great. I'm just bodying everyone. This is so sick that I can just combo like it's freaking 4. What's the problem? Like, oh, these things aren't really killing, but I'm still getting a lot of damage. Like, I'm getting 50% every single time. And then I played Larry. And when I played Larry with his SDI, I found out very quickly that a lot of those combos were simply just not real at all, right? And that's the really big impact. And also in this game too, you have situations where not just even SDI, but even just standard DI down and away is really, really strong against Bayo, especially if fast fallers, because you won't hit them with the ABK. So essentially, ABK, right? It's going in a diagonal up, and so when you do down and away this in this iteration of Bayo, a lot of times you just will fly over if you go for the second one, right? Because they DI down and away, right? Especially if they apply SDI there. So a lot of those things you don't get in the right position. There's also 3 particular hitboxes, 3 key hitboxes for ABK, aka Afterburner Kick, right? Her aerial side B. And depending on which hitbox hits you, you're going to fly a different direction. But again, you can, by SDIing properly during witch twist as well, you get a similar occurrence where you're not going to get a good hit of that ABK, or they could pop out on the top if they know what they're doing as well too, depending on the character, the weight and everything as well. You can find instances where even those standard combos aren't going to do anything. A perfect example, funny enough, Fox was a absolute like brainless matchup back and forth because you had the fair 1 strings, take them off, you can't do anything. In this game, it's very, very hard because essentially, like, down and away invalidates the majority of her combos. She gets early percent combos with double witch twist in the beginning into like up air, into like double jump fair. Sometimes, if they're DIing properly, you get 2 witch twists and they're probably out of it afterwards, right? And because they're fast faller, they can actually get down there before you and punish you pretty heavily. So I definitely feel that SDI in this game for Ultimate Bayo is such a huge deal. But even standard, like just knowing the general DI, the general rules of thumb in terms of how to DI fair, how to DI ABK, how to DI witch twist, those alone change the whole dynamic of this character. I know Ramses was talking about a little bit before, where this character is a huge knowledge check, right? And they've definitely simplified the knowledge check for this character this time around, where a lot of those things you guess, you get out, and you get a punish because she has to land, and then you go from there. Now she has mix-ups on her landings and stuff as well, but they're not as strong as they were before. And yeah, depending on how many specials she used, then you can get something pretty heavy. So it's very interesting how the difference between Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate Bayo when it comes to SDI and DI.
One thing I do want to point out is if you're struggling versus Bayo, which is such a weird thing to say nowadays, but I actually think it's a very common thing for most Ultimate players to not know the Bayo matchup. Very weird for me because I competed like the most serious of all the Smash games. I put most of my time as a competitor in Smash 4. So not knowing how to fight Bayo is like, what are you doing, right? Like, it's the most meta relevant character. You should know what you're doing, but a lot of people that play Ultimate probably didn't really compete in Smash 4 and don't really know about SDI and stuff like that. SDI did get toned down. There is a cap to it in Ultimate, if I'm not mistaken. So, or even if there's not a cap, it's got severely nerfed, essentially. So I don't know exactly if it's a cap or if it just got reduced overall. I didn't do too much research into that, but it's definitely different. It's definitely not as impactful as it was in Smash 4. But I feel like not a lot of players even understand SDI, or maybe it's not too practiced, right? I'm trying to think of other matchups where SDI is like super relevant outside of Steve. It's probably like pre-Fire to Pass 2 is probably like what, Ken, right? Some of the fighting like Ken, Terry, stuff like that. So now with the introduction of characters like Steve and now Bayo kind of coming back into the meta. And I think, Bam, you could attest to this, right? Like when you enter tournaments nowadays with Bayonetta, I feel like there's probably a lot of players that you just play against and you're like, oh, they don't know. Like,
oh, I robbed them.
Yeah,
yes.
like it's like, do they know?
1,000%.
And it's like, no, and then you're just like,
and they don't know, and it's like, oh,
right?
It's so funny. Like, even kind of like standard stuff where it's like getting the corner carry right with the fair chains through, and if they don't know how to DI, what happens a lot of times when people are hit off the side of the stage, they're all trying to DI in, or they don't know when they're supposed to be doing away, and depending on that, like that stuff is a really easy way for a Bayo to rob you, especially in ultimate, right? Because outside of that, standard is fair, even close to the blast zone. If you're DIing properly, is not going to be killing you obscenely early. It's really where you're in a situation where like if you don't know how you're supposed to be DIing this thing and you're trying to get away, and like you just get fared off and then like off to oblivion. Even in a lot of situations where you can get away from that second witch twist, because a lot of times what they'll do is do like ABK into witch twist 1 into witch twist 2, and for those of you who are unaware, witch twist 2 is the one that keeps you right next to her, right? And then from there, she can go do the fair chains. You can even you can hard SDI in as well and actually make her pass you when she does her fair strings. And potentially, depending on your character, you can actually punish her and kill her early for that as well. So there's like a lot of little things there. But again, because of the scope of Ultimate and how many characters are viable and how many knowledge checks there are, especially for a character that's like just not really seen in the meta as much, a lot of times people just don't know and they just get robbed just easily.
SDI, ABK, please SDI that move. That move.
I mean, at least learn to DI, man. Down, like I said, down and away is really versus character for a lot of characters. Obviously look depending on what your character's weight class is and fall speed, it could differ. But a lot of times that alone, just knowing that changes the whole dynamic of how this character plays against you.
You can SDI moves that are just one hit. That one hit, because it depends on how. I think Ramses was talking about one episode, right? It's like it's a combination of like hit lag, and I also think I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think ABK, just the single hit of it, has a higher SDI multiplier on that move, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Or at least that's how it felt like in Smash 4. It still feels like this in Ultimate.
It
has a lot of additional hit lag on it, I believe.
Oh, okay, so it's more hit.
So
yeah, okay.
It's a pretty generous. Like you can get multiple units of SDI.
Yes,
yeah. It's pretty generous. Nobody has any excuse to not SDI it.
Right. And the great thing about Ultimate, Smash 4, and Smash 64 SDI. So if you guys don't know, Smash 64, Smash 4, and Ultimate, they all share the same SDI, and then Melee and Brawl share their own form of SDI. So the good thing about the current or Ultimate's SDI is that while you're SDIing, you're also DIing. That's a huge benefit to it, because in Melee and Brawl, you have to do stick DI, which is like reverting back to neutral and then hitting the same position. So there's pockets of when you're SDIing that you could actually get neutral DI, which is most of the time you don't want neutral DI, right? You usually want to DI somewhere.
Just to clarify, the Afterburner kick has a 1.4 time hit lag multiplier, so it has 40% more hit lag, and has a 2.0 SDI multiplier, so SDI applies twice as much as normal. So yeah, it has both a hit lag and an SDI multiplier. So it's definitely SDI to single hit. Yep. Yeah.
Yes, that move, it's so important to SDI that move because, and God, Bayo, I remember coaching a lot during Smash 4, and Bayo was the number one thing I had to coach against, and it's so hard. And it's obviously the specials still apply to this game, but it's so hard to just tell someone like, oh, against Witch Twist, you SDI this way. Again, it's all dependent, right? Bam was talking about, fast fallers have a more viable way to go down and away. Why do you think Gluto has such a hard time against Bloom in general? I think that matchup's pretty bad. But on top of that, Wario is floaty. Wario's heavy, floaty, right? So these down options for floatier characters are pretty hard. Rosalina was someone that like classically could struggle against Bayonetta because she was tall and floaty, right? So these downward DIs were not that great. Of course, in Smash 4, it kind of depend on the matchup, right? Like Fox would SDI down against Bayo, but against a good Bayo in Smash 4, she would just transfer into an edge guard, right? So the same applies for this game. So like if a Bayo notices you're going down, then they're going to alternate their combo and just transfer it into like just cashing out with damage, getting the edge guard, yada yada. but it's more so understanding how much resources are online, right? How much is this wish list 1? Is this wish list 2? Did she already ABK? Does she have one more ABK left? Is this the last ABK? Right? Stuff like that. Because if it's the last ABK, you want to make sure you're not in range of Witch Twist 2, because that's the only way for Bayo to extend the combo. If she still has an ABK, you want to make sure that you're closer, because if they do a second ABK or a Witch Twist, then you're close to them and they can't, because they usually want the tipper end of the ABK. So there's a lot of situations to juggle around, and there's no like black and white, like, oh, against this move, do this. It all depends on the situation. At what point did you get caught in the Witch Twist? Did you get anti-aired from the Witch Twist? Did you get scooped up from the base? Right? There's so many different things. And on top of that, Bayos were even doing this in Smash 4, which is like why I think the character was going to get to a point that, you know, was crazy, but we never got to that point. But Bayos were starting to utilize single hit Witch Twist, which is not, there's no counterplay at that point. And I mean, there's a famous Smash 4 Bayo combo that Tweak used like barely any specials and got a 0 to death. And at the Vegas event, crazy combo. And like, I think it only used 2 ABKs. And so it's like understanding all of that stuff, and even the spacing at which they can get single hit Witch Twist, which is, in my opinion, that's where the character's going. I think we see Lima doing it. And I know Bam was saying earlier that Bloom doesn't even really, we don't see too much of that in Bloom's gameplay, which is so impressive because he's not even using the single hits, and that is like the next step for these Bayo players. I do see Lima going for those kind of follow-ups where you like single Witch Twist 1 or Witch Twist 1 single hit into another Witch Twist, and then you go from there, or yada yada yada, right? So
so I mean, a couple of things just like to add on to what you were saying, right? Like, so Pop is a big like Bayo labber, and one of the people who's really been pushing a lot of the single hit Witch Twist stuff. Obviously this stuff was found out a long time ago. You know, Salem back in the day, Smash 4, he was really big on the single hit Witch Twist stuff. We never really saw it come into fruition too much at the top play. But yeah, like there's that thing's really, really strong. People understanding how to combo outside of using the specials as well to add on the additional damage. You're seeing the up air loops and stuff that's going on as well for more people into from there, you know, getting themselves in there into like ABK as it were, right? To make sure that they have less points of escape, right, for their opponent. So that's a really big thing you've been seeing from Bayos. But before we kind of go into it, because obviously the big ones we're going to be talking about is Lima and then the GOAT Bloom, you know, and I know Ramses has a lot to say about that. I wanted to kind of go through as well what this character has, how this character has changed through the course of Ultimate, right? Because that's something we love to talk about. And again, Bayo is one of these characters that towards the later of this game's lifespan, we really saw these changes really pay out dividends for a lot of the Bayo players, right? Initially, we look at the start, like 1.1, which time is actually the minimum duration after the penalty for repeated use is increased from 5 frames to 22, which time scaling is lowered, and which time regeneration per frame is slower, right? So there's a lot of things we're just kind of like fixing a lot of the witch time stuff. We got nerfs in terms of like bullet climax and bullet arts not being as great as they were. Used to have like a stun jacket stuff back in 3.0. But really the big one, right, that we started to see is like dash attack was a big one where a lot more dash attack became more of an actual like kill option, so to speak, like a pseudo kill option that's still going to kill at like higher percents, but still became something that could be utilized there. We saw just like in terms of like the jab becoming better later on. That was a really huge one. Up tilt as well, being having to reduce on the overall frames, which allowed for up tilt bear to be an option. So that was huge. Even we saw it at a lesser, not as strong, but even heel slide also got a reduction there, and that's what allows you to do. You can do heel slide to bear. On fast fallers, actually, you can do heel slide to forward smash or heel slide to up smash, which is again going to be rare. You have to hit with the later part of heel slide to really get that to work. So you're not going to see that too commonly in the upper echelon, but still nonetheless getting the big one where it's like the up tilt bear and getting the jab actually to be a kill. Because now you had this mix-up situation for Bayo, right? Traditionally in Bayo, you get someone in a corner, If you're not edge guarding someone and you're not getting a hard read with the smash attacks, which are better in this game versus Smash 4, interestingly enough, you had an issue of getting a kill. So like you get in circumstances where it's like everyone knows you're going to go for a forward throw, and forward throw doesn't kill with proper DI until way later, right? So like you have an instance where it's like you have the jab or fair, big one that Bloom uses a lot, fair 1 to fair 2 into jab. He was getting tons of mileage out of that. But being able to utilize that and convert that into a kill, and then also having a dash grab that can kill now at those kind of percents, you get things that are a bit more ambiguous there. So that definitely was really huge for Bayo. Of course, then you have up tilt into bear. You can do that really good kill option in the corner. So I think those things really enveloped, like it just pushed the meta for Bayo, because Bayo in this game ironically just has a very hard time killing. Does a ton of damage, but then it's like, does the damage compensate when people get good with SDI and DI? It doesn't seem necessarily as much when you have such a huge issue with killing. But now you have Bayo's learning to new combo routes, and they have, because of the patches, those new kill confirms. So they're utilizing those in tandem to really lift this character up.
For sure. Yeah. Bam said a lot of what I wanted to say, so that's cool. That's cool. I think we're aligned in a lot of ways that in terms of what we think about the character. I think something that's interesting to talk about is kind of like the way Bloom approaches the character, because we actually talked about the character a lot, and like Charles said before, Bloom actually thinks, or used to think, I don't know if it's still relevant, thought the character was top 5 in the game. And well, I don't agree with that. When I play against Bloom, I understand why he thinks that way. The essence of Bayo, similarly to characters that are very mobility reliant, which Bayo is as well, is that she has a lot of options, but the options individually are not extremely strong. So imagine, like, compare it to, for example, a Wario or a Sonic, who wins neutral by using their movement to create strong situations, but then afterwards they kind of need to like capitalize on a strong situation as well. Which is often why, for example, you'll see Wario players be like, this character's hard. And it's because, well, you have to move around the opponents, and then you get a good situation, and then you still have to abuse the good situation. So you're like a few layers in before you even get your hit, right? Bayo works similarly, though a little bit more based around the threat of her movement options rather than the movement options themselves. And what you often find is that the one that stands out is the aerial afterburner kick, the up-angled one. Because it's burst range that controls the air. It's a very rare thing in this game, right? Like, good luck finding aerial burst range. I think the closest thing that is meta relevant is like Diddy side B, right? Which is like not as good as our afterburner kick, a lot slower, etc. So aerial afterburner kick kind of forces you to play a lot more grounded because of the reward on it. And so the way you should think about Bayo is not that she doesn't like run in and beat you down. She doesn't really react to your aggression and counter you. It's more that the threat of her options force you to play like a weaker version of your character, one that cannot really jump, one that has to think twice about pressuring a shield, because she has one of the better ubbies out of shield in the game as well. And because you don't have that pressure, because you don't have those jump ins, well, I mean, you do, but you gotta think twice about using them. Because that's limited, you're now playing a weaker version of your character, and this weaker version of your character, Bayo can beat them. Bayo can beat that weaker version of the character. Again, not like super hard. It's not like Bayo is like messing your weaker version up. But they will EQ out. And then add on top of that when Bayo hits you, she gets a combo, right? So like depending on the character, she can get upwards of like 60%, especially a character like Wario. And at that point, like, eventually you're going to be 100, and maybe you got an opening on Bayo, she's at 40. That's a significant percentage gap, and she's going to use that to camp you out. And now you cannot pressure her, you cannot be in the air, and you have to approach her. That's like a really, really bad position to be in. And then on top of that, if you bait her in a lot of cases, she still has options afterwards, right? So imagine you bait out a Bayo afterburner kick. In a lot of cases, you still have to punish her before the frame one bets within. If you're too late, you're going to get witch timed. She can air dodge away, double jump away. She has her aerials, etc., etc. Right? So like that's kind of like the whole dynamic. And then within that dynamic, there's also her walling, and that is where I think Bloom really like pushes the character further than other characters. So if you think about Bayo, it's not like she's a good walling character on paper. But her forward air one hitbox, I don't know if you guys remember that from Smash 4, but it's relatively intact. It hits above her or below her. And the crazy thing about her fair is that her fair one, if you short hop rising fair one and then fast fall, it auto cancels, which is insane. Because that means that she has essentially a I don't want to say unreactable option. But it is only reactable on anticipation because a short off fast fall, it's like 25 to 30 frames, which is like if you think reaction time is like 20 frames, and that is if you're reacting to a singular thing. If you're reacting to multiple things, it easily goes up to like 25, 30, 35, right? Like reaction time like rapidly increases as the reaction gets more complex. So like if you're not anticipating the short hop fast fall fair, then you're not going to be able to punish it. And if you're too late on punishing it, she's going to shield and up you out of shield. She's going to down tilt you, etc. Right. So like this same shit as we talk with the side B. So should you be anticipating the side B or should you be anticipating the forward air one? And then we add another option, down tilt, which has very similar frame data. It's like 28 frames, right around that sweet spot around reactability. And then there's up tilt, which has just about the same frame data since the patch. So like she has all these options that can overload your mental stack, that can heavily nerf your character. And so in many ways, she just drags you down. She just drags you down with these implied threats. And then when you're down in the drags, she beats you up. And that is the way Bloom plays it. And it's when executed well, it's beautiful gameplay. I absolutely love it. I think Bloom is the best thing to happen to Europe in a long time. Because you can see that he has these fundamental understandings of how the game works, both on a space level, right, in terms of how he implies control of space, and then as well as on a time level between just like the mix up within how he walls, as well as, like I said, like the whiff baits, the usage of the auto cancels. Of course, Bayo has this unique thing on her forward air where she can continue using it as well, and then the forward air too can combo into like a jab or a grab depending on the timing. So just like a lot of really, really solid aspects of fundamentals coming together in a huge way. And you can see it in his other characters as well, right? Like he has a win on Shuton playing Mii Brawler. He has a win on Abadango playing Mii Brawler using 0 combos, right? Like the biggest combo he used against Abadango was rapid jab. Like that is the level of funnies that you're laughing, Charles, but I'm for real. Like he never did.
It's just funny because a lot of people put they put the praise for that character because of
on the combos. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So
right.
imagine exactly. Imagine like Bloom having such great fundamentals that he can grab a combo character and beat people up without using combos. That is Bloom. And he did the same against Shuton. He hardly comboed Shuton. So like that is the level of funnies that he's operating at. And I think the thing about Bayo is it gives him a lot of options. Kind of like how Tweak talks about Diddy. I imagine the way Bloom thinks about Bayo is pretty similar, right? It's like, I don't have anything to overwhelm you, but just having this huge array of options allows me to express myself and always have some sort of avenue to outplay you on. And then on top of that, like kind of adding to like the idea of kind of like dragging you down, like there's witch time as well, which like a lot of people think about witch time like, oh, I cannot mash too much because I can get witch timed. But let's not forget, you cannot use projectiles against Bayo because she can just witch time on reaction, and even if it doesn't slow you down, she is still invincible after the animation. So she witch times your Young Link fire arrow, and then she dashes at you, and she's fully invincible while she down tilts or grabs you. Right? It's insane. So like in a lot of ways, like you cannot zone her out. Walling is really hard because of her wisp punish as well as just like her reads. As well as having a really good burst range, as well as having a really good shield. And then up close, she has primarily her up out of shield, as well as her walling. So like for every playstyle, there's an answer in her bag of tricks. And then at the end of the day, the question is like, the risk reward and the kill power, because like, yeah, you get your percentage advantage, but then it can jank you because you're giving them rage, all that good stuff. Like there's a lot of nuance to the character, I think. And it's just, to me, it's just like really cool to see people figure out that nuance.
I think that Bayonetta, more than most of the cast, is a character that is unintuitive to play against. A lot of the strong positions you are picking in most matchups are particularly poor positions to pick against Bayo. Likewise, a lot of positions that are usually very weak to play with are actually not that bad for Bayo. Like, for example, one of the worst places you can be in this game is to be on the ledge, except Bayonetta actually can fight essentially like it's still neutral from the ledge because she has forward air, she has so many Rekka mix-ups where she has multi-hits. She has one thing we didn't mention is how safe meaty ABK is, or maybe Ramses mentioned it, but it's fairly safe on block. So she has a lot of aerials they can be shield grabs, but they have to be shield grabs. And then if you're like a couple frames too slow, she can actually get out her otherwise pretty poor dodge data. So the biggest weakness Bayo has is probably the grabs.
I just want to jump in real quick. Her spot dodge is actually normal. I know, like in Smash 4, her spot dodge was a little bit slower because she has bet withins. And I know in this game, Mifra has a slower spot dodge because she has foresight. But Bayo actually has a normal spot dodge in this game. It's a normal 20 frame spot dodge. So,
yeah, it's all her other dodges that are.
Yeah, her rolls are worse than her air dodge too. But her spot dodge is normal. So you'll often see
I thought it ended
Bloom.
soon.
Yeah, it's weird. I think it's different than Smash 4 in that regard. Maybe it was the normal in Smash 4 as well, but it's more noticeable in this game because spot dodge is better. But I just wanted to jump in quickly. Otherwise, you're entirely correct. She just spot dodge up till you explode. So,
for the most part, she tends to be better against hitbox based. She's better at picking a defensive option versus hitbox based out of shield options, which just so happen to be the strongest options in the game. So one of the tenets I would say a lot of players learn moving up in skill levels is a quick habit to drop is to stop shield grabbing, to stop trying to grab at everything, to be more disciplined with how you act out of shield, or if you do, to use something that gives you mobility, like an out of shield aerial. And these, of course, have hitboxes. And so if she gets a bats within, it usually leaves her plus. And on top of that, it usually throws off people's fastfall timings because there's the hit lag of connecting. And the animation is a little bit different from what people are used to. And so they'll actually miss their fastfalls and usually throw off their timings. Her up tilt and down tilt, like Ramses mentioned, are a little bit, they are technically reactable, but if people haven't practiced reacting to them, they're usually slow. And so something you'll see a lot of like mid-level Bayos do is they'll actually up tilt somebody's shield. And while the final hitbox of Bayo's up tilt is pretty safe, it's like -10 or something like that. Usually what happens is Bayo connects with an early, less safe version, and then it whiffs the later hits point blank, and then Bayo's will just do a second up tilt anyways, and then people will just jump like 20 plus frames late into what's a very easy shield grab or whatever. Like most of the cast can just up smash out a shield. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they'll just get it anyways because people are just that bad versus Bayo. Like,
they're waiting for the second hit to hit their shield, but it's never going to hit. Yeah, exactly.
Like, just react to the up tilt. You're good. If you see her up tilt, you see her arm go above her head, just press a button. It's not that complicated. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where people just are conditioned to play poorly against Bayo. People are conditioned to wait for a multi-hit to finish. People are conditioned to jump a lot neutral. You're not supposed to jump against Bayo. You're supposed to stay on the ground for the most part. And top of that, a lot of players are rewarded for initiating pressure and being the first person to set up pressure on somebody else's shield. That's not how you're supposed to do it against Bayo. And it's not that you can't do that. It's that she is not great at starting her own pressure. And so essentially, usually when you're entering the neutral against Bayo, it's kind of a stonewall where neither character is supposed to really attack the other. But you're supposed to essentially bait out one of her bursts and then still be able to threaten to apply your own burst yourself, because her burst isn't very fast. So even things like her dash attack usually have a pretty high amount of startup for what they are. And so even though it's not what I would call the riskiest, like her dash attack can actually be, if I remember correctly, her Media's dash attack can actually go into a dodge before you can press a button, and she'll get bats that way. But the idea is a lot of the things that she has are just slightly not good enough if you play it correctly. And then, again, everybody plays poorly. She is unintuitive to play against. People are rewarded normally for covering things like ledge jump and being in the air versus a ledge option, so that you can double tap against her ledge positions. That's how you eat ledge. That's how you set yourself up if you're shielding and waiting for her neutral to get up. That's how you get her to forward air 3 past your shield. And then even if you do an out of shield option, it'll just be hitting her to center and she'll get a neutral reset. So most top Bayos not punished for overextending and pushing for their higher reward options the way other characters would be, because they don't get kept on the ledge even if they do get reversal. Like that's not really a poor position for Bayo. And so in positions where other characters at that level of play would get reversal, they don't. And so Bayos are freer to push their advantage in other places. And then on top of that, because people are pushed out of their comfort zones, that usually applies a different sort of mental pressure. When your game plan is different from what you're used to playing, you're going to be more conscious of things. And usually the more conscious you get about your play, if the Bayo player is high enough level to essentially read your in-game body language of sorts, to recognize your tells and collect information, then even though Bayonetta doesn't have the same ability to press strong kill moves as other characters, what you're going to see is the Bayo players are basically going to not have to use their information until they need to cash out for the KOs. And so another thing that Bayo players have pressed forward on that is they're starting to figure out more confirms. So, for example, her forward air actually confirms into things like jab. And then whereas before people didn't really get punished as much for air dodging out, now Bayos are starting to get like footstool down airs and things like that that punish you. So if normally you wouldn't want to press a button out of shield versus Bayo when she's going for bats, like let's say she ABKs into your shield, normally you would want to just shield grab that or something of that nature, but now she's a little bit, or she'll punish you if you're slow for that and she'll still get the footstool. If you try and jump out of shield, she'll get the footstool. So things that bats normally wouldn't cover, like you trying to go for a movement option, they just get footstooled and then she gets the down air anyways, which is one of her kill moves. And like speaking of Bloom, one of the things that I believe Bloom and Lima have been doing more often is going for reverse down air hits to get you to essentially DI poorly, because you're thinking that the down air is going to send you in and then it sends you back. And so you DI poorly, it kills it. So pretty ridiculous. Well, for her, pretty ridiculous percents. So double digits. And then on top of that, people are more likely to mash things like air dodge. And that's where her smash attacks come into play. So before early into Ultimate, if I remember correctly, she didn't have as many ways to essentially punish you for not mashing air dodge. And so she didn't have any ways to really pressure people into pressing defensive options for her to get the smash attacks. And now she can call out people's bluffs on that. So again, one of the issues people have versus the character is that they just make a bunch of mistakes and they don't actually think about what they need to do to pressure her without jumping, without just doing something unsafe on her block. And then on top of that, when they do touch her block, even if they had something that was -4 or safer, in which her up B normally shouldn't be hitting them, they're just going to be a little off space. So they're going to miss space on their shield pressure. They don't understand how aerials on block works. And so they'll just hit the top of a shield instead of making it as safe as possible. And things she should be able to up B out of shield or just up B out of shield for free because people are just bad. So another thing is I would like to specifically reframe the mindset of SDIing Bayo combos. So it is not a matter of picking an SDI versus a specific hit. You need to learn the roots of her combos, and this is basic knowledge. Learn her combos, where they take you, where they put you. Learn what her mix-ups are in those routes. Ask yourself, where do I want to go? And if you know you're specifically closer to a blast zone than normal, spoilers, her route is probably going to take you into the blast zone. So SDI in a way that forces her to take a different route. You're not going to lose your stock at 50% anymore. She shouldn't be getting these combos. The reason she's getting it is because she's getting multiple reads consecutively, or again, because you're just putting down the controller or SDIing the opposite way that you're supposed to, and then she, again, is getting multiple reads for it. Sometimes Bayos just go for pie in the sky combos, and then people will like mash SDI up because that's a common smash 4 holdover. That's not going to go great for you when you're just SDIing up. So, for example, ask yourself if Bayo is going to be able to recover back if she's coming out at you off stage. And like Bam said, a lot of the times SDIing down is going to keep her from being able to push it through all the way. And then on top of that, sometimes the Bayo players will push for it anyways. They're not going to get their combos 100% of the time. And that's why you'll see players like Lima, who, in my opinion, is at least top 2 Bayo in the world. He's going to go for it. It's not going to finish. And then he's just going to SD. And it's because he's trying to push his combos all the way he can, but Bayo just didn't have the resources, and the opponent actually didn't just give it away for free. So the idea is that you want to actually plan ahead and not just for a single hit, plan 3-4 hits in advance and ask yourself, where do I want to be when this exchange is finished? Just like any other positioning hit, don't feel entitled when you have Bayonetta on the ledge. It is still neutral. You're not free to just walk up and just get a hit or just try and react to anything she does. If you're going to try that and you're getting punished for it, be honest with yourself. Like, look at your VODs versus Bayo. And if you're getting hit at the ledge, give it up. That's the best thing I can recommend for high-level players against Bayo. Just give up your ledge traps. Go on, keep your corner pressure. Because it's not worth getting reversal. It's not worth getting ledge trapped yourself. Because she ledge traps just fine. If you can't jump in, give it up. That's fine. Just accept you don't know how to shield pressure and either really push it in training mod or just don't. And it doesn't matter if you're going in or not. Camp her out. Time yourself out. I don't care. Like, stop just jumping and giving shit away for free, please. It is awful.
Yeah, no, it definitely happens a lot. And so, I mean, Charles, what do you really think about this character in terms of what you've seen the current meta?
Okay, so current meta. Before I go into that, I just want to do a quick thing on SDI too. And this is one of the beauties of SDI. I think as a mechanic in general, I'm not a big fan of it just because of how taxing it is, the controllers and yada, yada, yada. But the one nice thing about SDI, and I did this a lot in Smash 4, and it also applies to Ultimate. Remember that when Bayonettas are doing multi-hits, a good Bayonetta player, they're reacting to your SDI. They're seeing the direction that you're going, and they're trying to map out and essentially, like Tony said, guess or react, right? After this multi-hit is done throughout the combo, right? So you can show SDI up, but when you get sent out from Witch Twist 1, for example, you SDI up, the Bayo player is seeing you SDI up, and then you switch back to down. But you also have to realize, like, is the Bayo player good enough that they're reacting to my SDI up and stuff? If you're playing someone like Bloom or Lima, obviously they are, right? So even gauging like the skill level of the Bayo and the experience of the Bayo and using mix-ups like this, it was a very famous thing to do in Smash 4 where you SDI'd one way and then on the last hit you switch over to the other direction and stuff like that. Masking your intent on the defense when you're on the defense against Bayo is so important. And then like Tony said, kind of pick your poison, right? What's the worst case scenario for Fox when he's getting comboed by Bayo? It's going to be put off stage, right? So if there's not, like, if I get caught by a Witch Twist 1 and I'm on the stage, but like I don't have enough state, like if Bayo's facing this way and the stage like ends here and I'm here, I don't have any stage to go down and away, right? If I go down and away, I go straight off stage. But it's like, if I go down and away, is he sending himself so high that he can't capitalize and I can get the Firefox going? Can he come back down on top of me? Can he get the witch time? There's so many different factors, right? And you just got to know what position your character's strong at and what positions Bayo is strong at against your character and kind of pick your poison. Because usually against Bayo, the general gist of it is if you go away, they can kind of put you off stage for the most part, right? And this is totally generalizing it. Obviously, there's way more variables to it. But generally, if you go away, they can put you off stage. And if you go like up and in, they can try to get you ladder off the top with the forward air. But usually that's not going to happen if the combo starts on the ground. So if the combo starts on a platform, then it's like, oh shit, I got an SDI down because like I don't want to get ferret off the top, right? And then that mind game comes in. But if you get start at the bottom and you don't have enough stage, then you can maybe go like up and in or something like that. Take some extra damage, but then Bayo's gonna have to like end the combo with a back air or nair and put you back on stage. And if your character has a broken recovery and then can navigate around Bayo's edge guarding, which not a lot of characters can do, but then sure, go for it, right? It's all case by case. And like Tony said, you got to understand these routes. You have to.
Yeah. That's rule number one, man. She's been in 2 games now. People need to learn it. I feel like there's people that still don't understand. They're like, oh, wait, Bayo can't do 3 witch twists. Oh, she can't do ABK twice whenever she wants, right? Like this, there's a lot of like simple things that really help you understand what the character's standard routes are going to be and their intentions, and that will take you very far, for sure.
To add to that, just like real quick, I think something that Charles pointed out that I think is interesting is that there's like two type of mix-ups while you're getting hit by like an R.O.B especially. One is like the SDI, right? So like you can SDI out on like the first hit and then transition to like SDI up, something like that. Like oftentimes Bayo just like they don't have enough time to react to like your final SDI. They will look at like the first input they can see and like that is what they're reacting to. So if you can do multiple types of SDI, that helps a lot. But what you can also do, like Charles said, is like SDI one way and then DI another way. And usually I think that is most powerful in these combos where she could kill you. So if you know that there's like a specific route where she can kill you off of it, if you SDI in a way that confirms that she can get that route and then switch it up later, 99% of the time, they're not looking for your SDI. They're looking to confirm if the SDI is what they want. So if you can get them to the point where they're trying to just like confirm that the SDI is what they want, you can give them what they want for just a little bit, then switch it up. 99% of the time, they're going to drop their combo. Of course, like that is still working within human error, but like I haven't met a Bayo who like in those situations accurately reacts still. So really like combining Charles' advice as well as, you know, like Tony said, knowing the routes. I think if you're at that point where you can like apply both yourself as well, that's where you're gonna do best against Bayo. Of course, it's still like a huge knowledge check because she has probably like the most expressive combo game in Smash Ultimate.
I'd agree. There's so many variables. It's definitely the combo game with the most amount of variables, or has to be top 3 at the very least.
Yeah, I think the only thing that comes close is probably Peach. But yeah, so it's kind of like, you know how people said, oh, you should mix up the DI on the Kazuya electric, the DI line. It's the same thing. It's the same idea. So TLDR, make choices. You can make a lot of choices with an SDI. Yeah. Now I would like to know what Charles thinks about Bayo in the current meta.
Yeah, I know we all have a lot to say about counterplay, because we are seeing Bayo come in to a lot of these top 8s and even winning some of these really big tournaments, right? And even Lima having an incredible run at multiple tournaments, getting top 8s, right? I believe the most recent one that I can remember that was like really big was Collision, and I believe Lima got 5th place there, was able to take out Tweak, get some of these big names, right? So and take out a bunch of other players. I think eventually losing to Meister in the losers side of things, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, at Collision. So we're seeing Bayonetta break into this upper echelon of play, and here's the red flag. Here's my big thing. It's 2 people doing it. That's my, cause like Big D with Ice Climbers, like, are we seeing another Ice Climbers? Is everyone getting matchup checked? Is everyone grabbing him while he's like turned around and like they don't know what they're doing, or they don't know as much? You know, there's so many characters, like 80 to 90 characters in this game. Like, you're not going to, even if you know certain things, like a lot of the times you have to go through the muscle memory to get it beaten into you, right? So you can like, oh yeah, I can't do that. Like you can know a lot of things, right? Because even for us, we know a bunch of things about Smash. If I played against Big D right now, I'd get sauced. And I would probably instinctually grab in certain scenarios where I know I shouldn't, because you have to go through the muscle memory, right? You have to go through like the trial and error. It's just how humans work. Humans can't like look at something and be like, oh, I know that. Boom. Instantly apply it, like, and especially in a game like Smash where it's, you know, there's like these frame tight inputs and stuff like that, and you have to react like in situations that you've been in through like millions of times. It's super easy to react in those situations. If you've never been in that situation, good fucking luck. I doubt you're going to react to like something that you even know you're supposed to react to, right? So I think it is a combination of that, but I also think that the Bayo players, we're seeing one Bayo player that's a Smash 4 vet. And then we're also seeing a newer generation, which is also very exciting. I love the new generation of Smashers that are coming through. Like, obviously, like the younger players like Spargo, Akola. Now we got Bloom coming up in Europe when they're all playing like very different characters, and it's really exciting to see. And like Bloom specifically is very, very exciting because it's a character that we didn't really think was all that great, the general community, right? And it's really sick to see, and I'm glad to see it. And the way Bloom plays Bayo, we're not even seeing the crazy complex stuff, because the crazy thing about Bayonetta was, even from the very beginning, the buffs help a lot. I do think Bayo needed those buffs, especially the jab one, to kind of get some of these placements, because there wasn't multi-pronged threats. And I think a lot of top tier characters, or at least like viable characters, have multiple pronged threats where it's like, oh, in this situation, you have to respect grab and a hitbox. And because of this, because I have multiple threats, you can't have a defensive flowchart versus me, right? This is actual mix, and I can get a stock here. Not like, oh, just hold shield here and you're fine, right? So because of that, I think those changes, and on top of that, Bayo is just really solving the puzzle with some of these bad matchups. I know Snake was a really, really hard matchup for Bayonetta because, you know, Snake can ledge trap Bayo because Bayo can't just, you know, witch twist to ledge and stuff like that, right? A lot of these hitboxes speak over. Another thing that Bayonettas have gotten very good at as well is spacing their ABKs to the ledge and just instant sweet spots and stuff like that. Just to avoid getting countered and stuff like that. A lot of the year one stuff that was kind of screwing Bayo over that she didn't really get screwed over by in the previous game. So people tried to reapply it and then they're getting jammed. But
yeah,
we're seeing the evolution of this character. It's very fun to see because when I look at Bayonetta and I look at some of just her singular moves, I'm like, man, can a character with Afterburner Kick really be that bad? Right? Because I truly believe, I don't know like what I would exactly rank it, but it's one of the best moves in the game. You give Afterburner Kick to almost any other character, a move that moves you, right? So it's a mobility option. So not only can you use it for movement, but it's a threat that it has a hitbox, and it's so fast that it feels like it has priority, but it's not that it necessarily has priority. You can still trade with it. It's just it comes out so quick. So unless you have a preemptive hitbox, then you're not going to beat it. And because of that, I think ABK, aerial ABK, is one of the most suffocating tools in the game, and it restricts movement. There's not any move that, or any move / character that restricts movement is going to be very strong, right? Because Ultimate is a game where it's like, oh, if I'm the one mashing on your shield, I'm the one winning, right? So, but what happens when you're on your way to go mash on someone's shield and you get kicked from halfway across the stage? And that's where I think a lot of lower level players or mid-level players kind of get screwed over by Bayo, because now they have to play and respect around this, you know, burst option. And yeah, I think Lima and Bloom are doing an incredible job of just showcasing the damage output from Bayo. Now, everyone says, like, I think the biggest point for Bayo being weak is, you know, she takes forever to kill, right? But are we also putting that in the context with how much damage she does? Because really, to me, it's not that Bayo does take forever to kill, but she also does a shit ton of damage. So like the amount of neutral exchanges that she has to win to take your stock, it's generally the same-ish around like some of the lower top tiers or high tier characters, in my opinion, right? It's not no Kazuya shit, it's not no Steve shit, but like obviously still very respectable damage output. And the only con is that she kills at later percents at around, I would say average Bayo stocks are 150 to 180, which when you say that out loud, you're like, Jesus Christ, that's such a high percent. But Bayo can still do a decent amount of damage because her specials have so low knockback growth that she can still chain specials into each other even around 100+%. So she can still get this damage. The only con is what Ramses mentioned, is you're dealing with a max rage opponent. That's the actual con of killing at later percents. You, as a tall, light character, has to not get janked out and killed at like 60, 70% by some wild swing, right? So these heavier characters can be a thorn in the side for Bayo because your only other line of defense is bats, right? So, but if you're just getting hit by one big straight hit, that like one wild swing, one wild trade, which is why I think most people, I think this is a common opinion, but like heavy characters do pretty well versus Bayo, like your Bowsers and stuff like that. I mean, that's what we thought, but I think the character is rapidly growing in the meta, or the growth of the character is rapidly happening. So I don't even know what Bayo's bad matchups are anymore and stuff like that. A lot of my knowledge is like pre-quarantine, before this like Bayo's like spiked up in value.
All
and
shitters.
stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
But I know traditionally she can struggle with heavier characters, because if you're saying the average kill percentage is like 150 to 180, well, guess what? Bowser's getting into 250. Like actually, I've seen Bayo matches where like Bowser easily gets over 200%, or like any of like the top 10 in the weight class gets over 200%. And it's like Bayo just needs that one last hit, right? And then when you get to the 200%, it's like, oh, dang, now some of these specials are actually not common because they're at 200% and stuff like that. And now it's just, you're playing neutral to neutral, And if the heavy character just gets one hit of anything, you're just dead because they have like super duper max rage and you're at like 70% and stuff like that. But Bayo players have shown, especially again, it's really impressive when I watch Lima versus AK. I love watching those sets particularly because we're kind of seeing two apex of the characters going at it. I would love to see Bloom travel out more. I think Lima and Bloom have very different styles. Lima has a more old school way of playing Bayo when it comes to like fundies and stuff like that. I think it's like way more patient and stuff like that. I think Bloom is a little bit more outgoing, is a little bit more aggressive, but because of that, Bloom gets better. I feel like Bloom gets earlier stocks, and I feel like the edge guarding is stronger from Bloom as well. So I do want to see Bloom come out and travel more because the only sample size we have is what, Double Down, and that was so long ago.
That's like the opposite impression that I have.
Really?
I always feel like Lima kills you with 0. He does not care.
Oh well, like Lima's combo game I think is better. Yes.
Yeah, I think Bloom is. I get what you mean. I think in neutral he will he will attempt to establish control over the neutral more willingly than Lima. Is that something
right?
we
Like,
can agree
Yeah, I
on?
think that's pretty much what you're saying.
right.
Yeah.
Like when Bloom is more willing to use hitboxes in neutral, and I feel like Lima is a little bit more conservative with using hitboxes in neutral.
Right.
But I
I do
also
think
Oh, go
Lima is way more willing to like throw out high reward options just to see if it sticks. Like
Mhm.
Lima will hard read your soul with a forward smash in neutral if he needs to. You know what I mean?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I think in that
Lima-
sense, like Lima will take more risk.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Tells you nasty things in neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's crazy. I mean, I think that when it comes to Lima, where it's like, yeah, he will throw out those hard reads, right? But like, I get what you're saying, Charles, in terms of like, I feel like he plays a lot more conservative. Like, I think that he's the one that you'd see more likely using bullet arch like to kind of like camp out and stay in that kind of positioning space, right? But once he's one of those people that once he gets a hit, right, it's like then this guy is chasing you to all hells of the earth, right? Just to make sure that I'm going to kill you. I hit you, now I'm going to keep you in this mix-up position, right? Or this combo, and you're going to die, right? And that's really how Lima plays it versus I feel like Bloom is very interesting because Bloom in neutral, he looks at a lot of the things that more of like, using the idea of the Rekka and the pressure there, right? And using that fair, using that movement and kind of making more of these like jump ins and stuff ambiguous, as it were. And so it's like a more mix-up oriented game. And then whereas it'll go that way, and then yes, we'll see times where Bloom will go ahead and just like take a stock, right? Just like the Bayo way, just go ahead and like rob a stock. But I think a lot of times with him, what I really, really love about Bloom, and I feel like is more consistent in my eyes, honestly, is the fact that Bloom will end a lot of these combos relatively earlier, but he utilizes that information to move forward. And he's like, okay, I get a soft reset here. I'm going to get some damage. I also know now what your intentions are, what defensive habits are going to be. And then he cashes out on the tail end of that, right? And I think that is a very beautiful because a lot of times you have Bayos, it's like either they kind of went to a point where Bayos were like, either I'm going to do these super hard reads, right, and condition, and I'm just going to rob this stock from you. But if I can't rob this stock from you, then I'm screwed because I'm not going to kill you until like a billion years from now, and I don't really have anything. I'm going to die. And I feel like Bloom operates in a way where he's found a way to have this character be consistent. You see consistency from him, right? And you see that in all his placings in Europe. Like he is jamming it because he's been able to find a consistent method. He's getting damage, but he also just like, he's okay with playing this neutral game. I can get this little damage here, relatively little for Bayo, but then I am able to get enough information in these interactions to continue it and continue and continue. And then all of a sudden you're done. Versus Lima, either I'm going to blow you up or I'm screwed. It's either do or die. It's very polarizing, I feel like, in comparison to Bloom.
I feel like Lima is out there to just like optimize Bayo. Like he looks at every single tool that Bayo has, and he's like, how can I get the most out of that? And that's why he's willing to throw out the forward smash on a read, because he has determined, hey, Bayo has these huge disjointed smash attacks that kill extremely early. Well, for Bayo standards, extremely early. So I'm gonna dedicate some of my information gathering to hitting these smash attacks. Whereas Bloom is more happy to just like play the quote unquote fundies game and say, well, it's not about what Bayo wants to do. It's about what I want to do within the engine and how to do Bayo tools like form like play around that concept. And what you get is that like Bloom will generally have like less like let's put it this way, Lima has higher highs and lower lows, because if Bayo succeeds, then Lima succeeds. Whereas for Bloom, it's more like he has an option for every situation because he just wants to play the engine. And that's why you see him have success with so many characters. Like, he took a game off of Gluto with Joker. Like he beat Shuton and Abdango with Me Brawler, like I said before. It's because like he's solving engine problems with tool sets of characters. Whereas Lima, it feels like he's trying to warp the game around his character as much as he can. And both of those styles are extremely valid. Like I'm not saying this to flame either of them, right? I think both of these styles are extremely powerful. But I think if you want to talk about like optimal Bayo, I think theoretically it's going to be somewhere in the middle.
Right.
Agreed.
And I think that is interesting. I think once we transition to a point where like Bloom hits the natural ceiling of just playing around the engine, and where Lima hits the natural ceiling of just playing around Bayo, like that is the point where we're gonna see evolution in like outside of the box for either of them. And I think that is gonna be the part where the character gets really, really interesting, because then it's like who's gonna live, like is it gonna be Bayo warping it around her own options, which can be extremely explosive, or is it gonna be the more engine focused approach where she's she has an answer for everything, which is consistent, but is it really dominant? Never, right? I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah. Real quick, I wanted to add, because I know we've talked a little bit about this. Right, for Bats Within, like, yes, there are certain circumstances where Bats Within can be plus for Bayo, but there's also there's a lot of situations where you could trap Bayo, and honestly, Bayo arguably can take more damage, right? You'll see it with certain characters where it's like, for example, like for say a Fox, right? And the Fox goes for like an up tilt string, and if you go for Bats Within there, you end up landing on the ground. You take half damage, by the way, when you do go through a Bats Within, so you're still taking damage, and now you're on the ground, so you're in a better position for someone to once again launch you and go ahead from there too. So there are some instances where you can make Bats Within work in your favor, especially in this game in comparison to like 4. So I just wanted to point that out. I know we talked a little bit about the positives, but there is a con there as well.
And
also,
she's light, so the half
yes,
damage really, really matters.
Yes, it really matters. Also, too, another thing that I think about is, oh my gosh, Bayonetta, Bats Within, frame 1, so stupid. I hate this character. I can't combo. As long as you're doing something that's a true combo, it's a true combo. It doesn't matter. She can't mystically just get out of your combo. Also, that being said, because of her particular hurt box, particular her weight, and her just in general, like her fall speed, a lot of times, a lot of options, a lot of like combo routes last longer on her than they would on other characters, which is what is very scary for her. So if you are on point, right, and it is a true combo, a lot of times you'll find your true combos will work to higher percentages, which is where she runs into situations where certain things that probably wouldn't be a kill confirm for anyone else are a kill confirm on her, despite her having her frame 1 out, right? So these are things to really think about when you're going against this character, because sometimes I feel like, again, and this is just kind of the misinformation out there, but people just have this idea that like, oh, will this combo work? I'm like, it's a true combo, yes. Why would it not work? Like, it's not gonna, like, she can't just go bats and like just it's not a combo breaker. It's not a burst. Like,
imagine
right?
if a character had a burst, that'd be broken.
Yeah, like it's crazy. Oh well, never see that character. Who's that? So it's like it's ridiculous, but like it's just good to be aware of that when you are going ahead and building your strategy against Bayo. And then the last thing I'd love to say on my side is bullet arts. I think bullet arts, we've seen Bayos camp with them every now and then as well. You can use that in your aerials. There's certain instances where you can actually do it, and if you let go of the bullet arts in time, you will not have additional lag when you land. But if you just do the standard and you're holding bullet arts, you will lag longer than if you didn't do it, right? But there's ways, like I said, there's certain ways you can circumvent that. For just for those who unaware. Also, too, bullet arts are really interesting because they will trigger things like Bayo can trigger her own witch time from across the stage, essentially, because of bullet arts. So if you like extend it, yeah, it'll trigger witch time, which is hilarious. Also, they interact with grenades as well. I think that Bayos do need to use that a lot more versus Snake in the matchup, because that in tandem with using Bullet Climax, which is her neutral B, that actually makes it harder for him to like camp you out and do a lot of things there. So those are just things food for thought. I definitely think that there needs to be more done in terms of finding ways to utilize that outside of the standard, like let me get a little damage with my down tilt. Bullet arts and call it a day. There's a lot of interesting things that move does, but
side B bullet arts to get the push. I saw
that's
there was
crazy.
A clip that Lima did.
Yep.
I think it was Lima. Yeah, the side B against Roy, and side B didn't connect, but that's not what Lima wanted. Lima held the bullet arts on the, because I think you can do it on almost every single one of her moves. I'm not too sure every single one, but you can definitely do it on right. You can definitely do it on side B, and then Lima held the B button, got the bullet arts, pushed Roy just enough, and I mean we know Roy, not the greatest recovery distance wise or just in general, so just that little push was enough to get the gimp and get the stock. So a lot of creativity when it comes to that.
This is funny. It's funny. Bam, you maybe know this, but Bayo actually has 2 spikes. One of them is her downer. What is her other spike?
I mean, besides down smash, I'm assuming you're saying 3.
Oh, right. Beside down smash, you're right. She has 3 spikes. She has a third one.
Are you talking about for the bullet arts? For the upper?
It's her forward air 3, I think it is. She shoots downwards.
Oh, shoots down. Yeah.
It's so funny. There's a local Bayo. I don't know if you guys know Ao. He used to be a Bayo in Smash 4. He won Albion over Quick and Gluto and others back in Smash 4, and he actually plays a little bit of Bayo in this game. And like in friendlies, he will always look to like spike you with the forward air bullet arts at least once, and it's so troll because if it works, it's a lasting spike. It's absolutely awful. It's not practical at all. But it's so funny. She's so much stuff. She just has so much stuff.
She has it's funny too what you can do in situations. The bullet arts up air, right? The standard, she jumps off, she does a pinwheel, she goes all down. Side note, by the way, that move is not entirely active, right? It's funny because sometimes when you see it and the hit sparks, how it looks like it's like the entire hitbox is there. It's not. It's a lie. Yes, it's a
what?
Yes, it's a lie. I think it's a lie. It's funny because it looks like the entire hitbox is active all around her, and it's not. It actually rotates.
Oh, it's only on the tip of one of her feet as well. Yes. It's not even both feet. Yes. That's crazy.
Yeah. So a lot of people think it's more active, but there's been so many situations where I've legitimately died because I'm doing the move, and then like even Charles will play sometimes, and he's just like he'll swing at it because he's like, I don't think it's real there, and it's like sometimes it's not, and I just lose, and like it is what it is, right?
Yeah. Firefox comes through.
Just Firefox just bodies
so
me.
Funny.
But when you do bullet arts there, an interesting thing happens, right? It gets a second hit. And then you can hit someone out. Sometimes that hit, I think the knockback growth on that one is different. So there's certain situations where that ends up being stronger than hitting with regular up air. So you've seen some confirms off that. But then also, if you're inside her while you're when she's doing the bullet arts, there's situations where you actually don't go anywhere. You get hit and you just stay there, and you're right next to her. And so like that's also another interaction where like then you can like. Obviously, you should be able to punish her more often than not, but sometimes people will be so confused because they're like, wait, I didn't go anywhere. And then like she gets a combo from it or whatever it may be. So there's a lot of interesting interactions with her bullet hearts in particular, and they're on all these moves. So you just get a ton of these like minor interactions that you wouldn't usually see before. But I definitely think bullet arts are often slept on in terms of the nuances that they bring. But we'll see.
I'm looking up the held up air, and it's actually like stronger all the way to like 140% than the normal up air. That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right. The things this character has. Man.
I think that I actually have my opinion of Bayo is that she's actually a little bit better just before top level. And I think that there's a very large number of very relevant Bayo players. Like obviously Geist is up there on his throne in the Midwest, and then we have like Deathbait, Frog, etc., But the idea is if you go to a region, they probably have a relevant Bayo. Then I would say that she's actually like when you go like 3/5, 4/5 of the way up the ladder, she's one of the most ubiquitous characters in the game. Just from my personal experiences. So the idea there is that once or until you've cleaned up your and disadvantage and also finishing your food, she's actually that little space just before you reach there is where she's strongest in the metagame. And so after there, you have to just be far and away the best with Bayo's combos, aka like Lima, or you need to just be Bloom and just randomly be one of the best players in the world. So
I don't know how he did it. He just played Wi-Fi.
Hey, it works. If it works, it works. So yeah, like Bloom, as Ramses mentioned, is just fundamentally sound. Like he would do the same with any character. So he's going to do whatever he's going to do with whatever he wants to do. He's just an outstanding player. And I think Lima will be very similar once he decides to stop proving to everyone how much smarter he is than they are. So
he's definitely that type of player.
Yes, he is. Like if he doesn't make you look stupid, it's not for him.
Yeah, so, yeah, he didn't win.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of outstanding Bayo players, and not just the two. So I just want to make that clear. So this is not a rare character by any means, but once you do make it all the way through pools, like say round 3 of final bracket is usually when she starts falling off, and then you get to the 2 problem.
Yeah, and I mean it's hard, right? Because I mean we go into her neutral. It's interesting because you look at the fact where wow, this character actually has an actual shield, right? In comparison to some of these other characters, right? Because of Witch Twist, and having that incredible option. But then it's like you also go into the fact where outside of that, like her fastest option is essentially Witch Twist, right? Up close. Everything else, like her jab was like frame 9, I think.
Yep.
So it should be like frame 9. Her fastest option is frame 7, right? Or down tilt and up tilt. Like it's crazy how our F tilt is freaking 13. Useless ass move. It's funny that they buffed it just so we could do fair, like afterwards, like at like 0, like random buff. That's cool.
We take those.
Yeah, I mean it looks cool as shit. I ain't gonna lie to you, but
she needs it.
Yeah, she definitely needs it. Yeah, but that's where a lot of times she'll have these problems, right? And like you guys said, a lot of points like you're trying to convince your opponent to like swing at your shield or feel like there's so much pressure and it's implied pressure that they do something preemptively, and she loves that. You swing out there for no reason. I'm not even there. Now I am ABK, and it's like great. Oh look, I'm mixing around. Look at me throwing all these moves up. Just when you try to swing at me, I'm in shield. Up B. See you later. Right, and those are a lot of key options, and it's funny because this character has a lot of options when it comes to everything except neutral, in my eyes. Right, I think once you get to neutral, then it's like her key, like her options, like for her to actually get damage and press anything is like it's like ABK, Witch Twist out of shield, and like everything else is like pretty like fairly weak. Obviously, fair is going to be the closest. Like fair is going to be good. Down tilt is like well, down
the hurt box
like,
shift is crazy.
Stuff. Yeah, hurt box shift is really good. The hurt box shift is crazy. But it's like these are not as safe as the things that you tend to see from the top the top of the top, right? Standard characters, yes, it's gonna be good. But like when you're talking about in comparison to the top,
it's serviceable, yeah,
right. So I think that's where a lot of the Bayos have learned to become creative, right? Where she has so many options, and yes, all of them are particularly like can be particularly on the weaker side, or like they're gonna be a commitment. But when you have so many of them, right, then it's like that mixed up in itself, right? Like she is literally like in neutral to me, and that's why I love seeing Blue play it. It's like Rekka the character. Like, yeah, technically if I stop here, like this isn't safe, but what if I do this though? Right? What if you're off a little bit? Right, and like that is a viable strategy. Right? When you have that many mix-ups there, it's like, yeah, even if like every mix-up technically ends in a commitment, that should mean that you should be punished. When you have so many, you start to lower people's reaction time. Like Ramses was talking about already, right? Once you start to add multiple options, your reaction time goes up goes down, right? Like exponentially, right? So that's always going to be a big thing there. But Yeah, it's been crazy to see Lima like go ham. I have not seen the videos yet of him doing it in tournament, but I did hear that he's actually doing Witch Strike stuff a lot more. For those of you unaware, I know we talked about it a little bit, but just to reiterate, Witch Strike is essentially Witch Twist, but you only get the single hit, which is like insane. I know Charles was talking about it a little bit earlier, and it's to the point where if you get like a witch time on certain characters at like 30 or 40, and you get to appropriate witch strikes, like you can kill. You can like get to like potentially a guaranteed kill, which is insane, right? And it's kind of shades of Smash 4, right? In that kind of saying, in that sense. So I mean, even seeing things, even myself being able to do like a witch strike out of the witch twist 2 and do be reverse. I get that to a point where it's like now they're behind me, so now I get a bear ender, right? And it's like if I get a bear ender like really high, that can kill relatively early, and especially if no one's expecting it too, that's a whole nother thing, right? Even if they by some miracle DI it correctly, that still is a really dangerous option. So yeah, the character has so many interesting ways to express themselves, and that's really why I have so much fun with this character personally too. But it's really really interesting to see these guys continue to get better. Obviously, a mainstay also has been edge guarding with this character. They're continuing to learn better how to really tackle other characters' recovery routes, and when you're able to do that with Bayo, that is another way where she's really getting these kills. Lima does this quite often. Gets you off stage and he just stays out there. He sharks you with these specials. ABK is back if he needs to refresh, comes back and he's staying out there for a good freaking 3-4 seconds because he can. It's with the character, and then swings at you with a bear. One thing that we see Bayo's doing, and I love to do as well, is like using witch twist almost like a shine spike of the war. Like you run off stage, you do your witch twist, and it's like, what up? Now I'm back, and a lot of characters just getting hit by one witch twist. I'm all the way back there. I have to burn my double jump. And guess what? This character can go all the way down and come right back. So now they can chase you down there. They hit you with another one. If you lost your jump, sucks to sucks. You're done. Even situations, they can go for a run off witch twist, and you're DIing for that. Then you're like, okay, now it didn't hit me that bad. They recognize that. Then ABK twice bear. Now you got killed at some ridiculous percent because she was able to do witch twist ABK twice in the bear and hit you near the blast zone. There's like a lot of those different nuances with this character, and they're getting a lot more proficient on utilizing those tools and edge guarding. And that's also another way how they've been able to really make, cash out on the insane damage that Bayo can do, which has been really nice to see.
Yeah. And I think this character, I don't want to say, I'll go ahead and say it. I do think this character is a little bit future proof, just in a sense where, we don't know everything about this character's punish game, right? There's a lot of Witch Twist 1 or Witch Strike setups, right? That we're kind of getting into a little bit of knowledge of. And I know this was found out quite a while back, but kind of seeing the top Bayos apply it to tournament gameplay, we still haven't really seen that on a consistent level, right? To the point where they're just like, oh, wow, like these Bayo players are consistently getting stocks at least like once or twice in the double digits, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. If we start seeing that, that's crazy, right? So even though I don't think every top player is doing the correct counterplay versus Bayo, at the same time, I think there are a lot of things that the Bayo players can get a lot better at. And I think this character has a very high chance of staying relevant. And on top of that, just the pilots of the characters, especially the top two, Lima and Bloom, doing incredible jobs of just kind of overcoming the bad matchups, right? I think that, to me, that's always what held Bayo back, where it's like, wow, this character just, has so much of these really great tools, but what do you do against Snake? What do you do against some of these heavier characters, or, some of the other bad matchups that I might not know about? And they're doing a really great job. And it's, even if you don't think the character is good, if you think the character is a mid-tier, I mean, it just kind of like Incineroar, at the end of the day, if you want to win a major tournament, it'll probably behoove you to know the Bayo matchup, right? Because now that there's two really top level Bayos, I know that Bloom doesn't travel too much outside of Europe, but once Bloom starts traveling and we start seeing like Lima and Bloom in these like top 64s, top 32s, and a bunch of these other top players are going to have, they're going to have to go through the Bayo test, right? And we'll see how that goes. But at the end of the day, right now, Bayo is a very relevant force in the meta. So
yeah. Quick question. Sorry to interject, but Ramses, you may know this. For Bloom, is Bloom willing to travel out here, like US, a bit more? What's his like circumstance now? Is it really that he just like want to? I mean, I know he's on the other side as well.
Ooh, the
Do you think
inside's
there
good.
is a world? Yeah, because dude, I would love to have Bloom at an invitational, and you know, there may be some in the
So
future coming up. So who knows?
Or you live in the same country as him, right? The country of Europe.
I hate this one. That's crazy. I got him. Dumb.
I love
So
being a
dumb.
stupid American.
I know, we're all dumb.
we even speak the same language. We
It's
speak
crazy.
European.
Yeah.
European.
I love European. That's my favorite language.
Oh, nice. So you could translate. Sick.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Cool.
So there's a few things about Bloom. So first of all, he's like really young, right? I think he
Mhm.
came in the scene when he was like 14.
Mhm.
And it's always been a little bit rough for him to travel just because he's so young. You don't have a lot of budget to travel with. But he recently, at UFA, he got picked up by BMS, who was like, they sponsor Raflo as well. But Bloom is definitely like their flagship player now. And BMS, like they're probably like a top 2 sponsor in Europe right now, together with, or top 3, together with Carmine Corp, who sponsors Kurama, and
Yep.
Solary, who sponsors Leon and Gluttony.
Mhm.
So he got a really good sponsor, and ever since then, he's been traveling more. So that's like really positive. For the US, I think, if I recall correctly, he has to travel with his mom, or he prefers to travel with his mom. His mom comes out to every tournament that he attends, by the way. She's a lovely lady.
Right.
Yeah, she's always in the crowd, always super proud. She tries to keep up with what happens. Very very awesome person. But so he basically has to pay like twice the cost, right? Double the tickets, double the hotel stays, double the food. So it's just like a huge barrier for him to travel. I don't know what his current goals are, but I imagine given his dominance in Europe, he hasn't lost a tournament this year. He has not lost a single tournament this year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that is going secondaries and winners too, right? Like he went to Shonen War. He played like Aegis and Rosalina against Andres, and then Bayo. To be fair, Andres beat the Bayo as well. But like he's just like confident enough to just like fuck around with secondaries and winners. I imagine he has his eyes set on something greater. So I hope he travels more, because I really think he can make some magic happen. Like Double Down, like you guys said, was like the one showing. And even at Double Down, he didn't do bad. Like he lost to Proto, who won the tournament, and Jackal, who I think got top 8. Plus, Jackal is Lima's demon. I think their set record is like entirely in favor, like not entirely. It's very much in favor of Jackal.
Jackal knows what's up. Yeah.
And it's his first time competing out of country. Like, you guys don't know, but like competing in the US as a European, it is really rough, because like, so the first time I went to the US, like. I sat down to play, and I was like, holy shit, what's this pressure? And like, I think that's why I'm always impressed by the Japanese, because sometimes they just come over for the first time and they just like beat everyone. And I was like, how do you do that? Like,
and the jet lag and all that. Like, there's so many other factors too.
Yep.
The culture shock, dude. When I was in the US for the first time, I was like, why are you guys always so friendly? There's nothing, like, you don't know me. Why are you laughing at me? It's so different. It's so different in so many ways. So like, there's a lot of new information to take in. It's just a lot of adjusting, a lot of pressure. Also because like, if you're a Bloom, right, you're paying double the flight, double the hotel stay, double the food. You're like easily like down $1,500 just to get to the event. And now you're fighting to make that worth it. Like, that's just really rough. So I'm really proud of the 13th place from Bloom, fighting against those two. He beat Kome, right? Like, best Shulk in the world, former best Shulk. No, I'm just kidding.
Double Down was very stacked, by the way, too. This wasn't
It was
just
extremely
like
stacked.
This wasn't like, oh yeah, Bloom was like 5th seed or 4th seed, like should have got top 8, yada yada. Like, there was a lot of Japan talent. Like, that tournament was very stacked, and the reason being was because VGBC got all the crew battle stuff, right? So there's like a Europe, Japan, Mexico, US. So that tournament was really stacked. 13th at that tournament is very impressive. Just kind of like setting impressive. The precedent.
And then like, even in the set that he lost against Proto, which was on stream, I think he took a game, and he just kept it very competitive all around. So like, honestly, I think it can only go up from here. But I'm not sure if he has any direct plans. I think he wasn't supposed to go to Battle of BC, but he canceled or something like that. I think there was something like that.
No.
But,
well, you know what? Tell him he needs to talk to us, man, because we want to get him out here for an invitational. That'd be nice.
Oh shit! All right, I'll send him a DM.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, he's so talented, like you said. Like, dude, getting 13th, like with all the things that you guys described, right? And he's just gotten exponentially better since that time. So, and that's the big thing. Like, it's very noticeable how much better he's gotten as well. So, I think with the refinement of his neutral there, I mean, obviously he's always had neutral, but it continues to get better and better. He continues to add on different layers. He's gotten a lot better at his overall combo game too. It used to be a time where it felt like he'd get a little damage here, he'd get damage here, get damage here. Again, relative to Bayo levels of damage, of course. But now it's like I see a lot more of those. Oh man, he just took that entire stock. Something that we're more accustomed to seeing from Lima, right? So, kind of going back to your original point, where it seems like there's these two ends of the spectrum, right? Two sides of the spectrum here, and that like is somewhere in the middle is probably where a true Bayo, like the optimal Bayo resides, and I do feel that Bloom has been inking towards that, and he's just really, really been able to increase that level. I mean, obviously, Lima has been getting better at this stuff too, but again, I think we all kind of agree here. Like Lima, he's a very special player. I really think he's a very, very incredible player. He reminds me of like Mars in a way where like he's one of those people that just kind of wants to make sure that that you're bad at the game, right? Like he just wants to let you know like what's up, and I think that sometimes overrides how serious he is applying himself in that, so to speak, right? So, but I would love to see them both there. Said, really big fan of the character, super fun. I love seeing the little things here. I mean, even I've seen a lot better usage of Bullet Climax as well from people, which has been really cool. That move does a ton of damage. Like I feel like sometimes people forget how much damage Bullet Climax does if it hits. Like even not like the charge shots, just a regular hits. You catch someone lacking at the right range, and it's like you're just eating just too much damage for no reason. Also helps with setting up edge guards depending on where they are. You don't want to always just lock yourself into that, but it's definitely a really great tool in tandem with all the tons that she has, and I've been really loving that usage as well.
Absolutely. So that is going to wrap it up here at Coach's Corner. Talked a lot about.
Can we do a final
around the horn? Around the horn. Go for
it. Let's do it.
So there's two things that I want to highlight before we end today's thing, because there's just so much things to talk about, right?
Right.
I think one thing that is super overlooked about Bayonetta is like her side B burst range. And I don't mean as in like, oh, it's such a good move, because it is. But like the thing that makes the side B insane is that it only has 10 frames of lag. So it's active until like frame 20, and then it's over on frame 31. So normally when you play around dash attacks, you position like at the edge of the burst range, and then you just like barely leave it, and then they miss, and then you punish them, right? If you do that against ABK, you're generally going to be too late. And even if you're on time, if you're a little bit off, then you're still like, like the margins are small, right? So like even if you get out of the range and are ready for it, even then you can be too late at times. So the way you deal with the burst range is to generally like walk forward enough to shield an early part of the move or to crouch under it and then punish it. In which case you're going towards Bayo, which again makes her neutral a lot stronger. So I think like next time you watch Bayo, I really recommend like looking at that dynamic, especially when you see Bloom play, because he loves to play around the fact that the opponent is coming towards him, like we kind of talked about with like the percentage leads and stuff like that. So I think that is super interesting. And then something that I think is interesting, and I'd like to hear from you as well, is like how good do you think Bayo is? So like personally, I think this character has potential to be a top tier. I don't know about top 5 like Bloom things, but personally, I put a lot of value in characters that can solve a lot of problems rather than a character that solves a few problems very effectively. And I think this is more of like a late meta thing. I think in current meta, there's no way she is a top tier. But I think as the meta evolves, kind of like, we talked about this in the Incineroar episode, how like you can play the engine well enough to negate a lot of the character unique tools, or at least make them less potent. And I think the better people get at like negating the uniqueness of characters, the better all-rounded characters become. So yeah, I have a lot of hope for Bayonetta's future, but I would be really interested to hear why you guys think she's good or bad, or like where she lies in terms of power level.
Tony?
Tony.
Yeah, Tony.
Well,
I know.
Tony.
Tony has something to say.
He hates
So-
me.
I think that Bayonetta has a very similar corner dynamic to Sephiroth, honestly, is the character I would compare her most with. So
Uh-oh.
I would like to see Bayonetta players be willing to take hits to escape corner more. And by that I mean not necessarily getting literally hit, but rather to understand that sometimes it's better to just grab the ledge and use that as essentially a save point, and then to mix that up by sometimes going and making breaks for center from there. So I think one of the mental constructs that Bayo players make to establish her neutral is to picture her as being like a concrete block or a rock, where you are using down tilts to kind of poke at the opponent, and then if they play around down tilt, it generally opens them up to your burst tools, either because they're using things like more committal dashes that you can catch, or because they're jumping, which is obviously a no-no. So what that next level is people will try and bait out her bursts by using jumps that look punishable but are difficult to respond to. And so I don't think that Bayo necessarily has to hit them, because the next level past that is that if they're trying that out, then what they're not doing is they're not pressuring your greater movement tools. And so you can afford as Bayo to use bigger movement options, make bigger plays, jump onto platforms and whatnot from there. Things that are usually not a good idea or more reactable. Because of the way the mental stack works, adding that platform play is either going to help out the rest of your interactions, or more likely they're just straight up not going to pressure your platform right away. And if they do, that's usually to Bayo's advantage, because she is uniquely capable of punishing players for making predictable pressure, where normally that's systematic. So, for example, for Charles, we'll say Fox can basically just run up and start a short hop up air. And even though you know it's coming, you still have to block the up air. And then even after the up air, you're usually not in a good position afterward, because you can't block a second up air. Or if you try, then he can just use one of his multi-hits to get a guaranteed shield stab. So for Bayo, she can just throw out her counter. She can use Bat's timing to go ahead and move within. She can just go ahead and reposition, or use a timing mix-up like a down air, so that when it looks like she's going to land, she just gets the stall and pull. So she has so many mix-ups there that she is uniquely not vulnerable in those kinds of positions. And then adding in the greater context of where you're looking for what is normally fight or flight, you're going for the secret third option, which is buy a house down on the beach and go live there instead. So the idea is that there's different ways that you can punish your opponents for making predictable plays. And it's not just hitting or being hit. Sometimes you're looking to get a better situation, even if it's not necessarily the best situation that you're looking for. So it doesn't have to be strictly advantage. Just switching from disadvantage to neutral is its own win. And I don't really see most Bayos looking at that. So that's one of the things Bloom does very nicely, is he's okay with going for small leapfrogging interactions that enable him to completely retake the opponent's stage control. And then on top of that, there's the additional dynamic that most Bayo players, when they're attacking your shield, they're not attacking your shield because they want to hit you. They're attacking your shield because they want to get into block and then bait you into mashing something that they cannot be out of shield. And that's usually where that works. And then eventually, when she punishes you enough, people will start committing more and just try and reposition. They'll do something like roll out, and then you'll see Bayos do something like nair into your shield and then immediately just grounded ABK. And that's where she'll get some of her bigger combos. And so you'll see Bayo players call that out more. But ultimately, it comes down to her not really over positioning or over committing, and then the opponent trying to, and then getting baited into over commitment. But on a greater scale, what I'm suggesting here is that you focus on rather the commitments for the initial hit to think about where you're going to be positioned after this exchange, 2 or 3 exchanges down the line, and ask yourself, well, how is this going to look after they block this if they did play it right? And then I swing there safely, and then where are we both going to be? And I would like to see Bayo players play more for that because I think Bayonetta is uniquely suited and equipped to be able to toggle with stage control more than most of the cast. Mm-hmm. So she has, I think the character that I usually think of as being similarly strong is probably Sonic. So Sonic is very strong at being able to play from multiple different stage positions. And then if he doesn't like where he is, he can usually attack to move to a different position. And I think Bayo is similar. So that's what I would really like to see from Bayo players more than anything, is just to learn how to punish your opponent without hitting them, and also without setting them up to get hit right away, and still be able to look at it, write it down on paper, and then say, yeah, I was better off if you were to look at like 5 actions as a chunk. Then what is the sum of those consequences going to look like for Bayo? On the other side of the coin, I would like to see players actually learn how to punish burst options like dash attacks without using shield or jump. Really all it comes down to. And most of the player base cannot do that. They don't know how to move on the ground. And if they do, it's going to be with a particularly committal movement option where they just lose access for double-digit frames at a time. You can walk. You can use wave dashes. There's all kinds of fun little things you can do in this game. You don't necessarily have to do it at the same time or right away. You can even do something like crouch and then do the movement option to bait your opponent into responding to the initial thing. Have some nuance. Please have some subtlety and develop your ground game. Develop your movements. I appreciate the Bayo player base for calling out how shitty the average Ultimate player is. You guys suck.
Damn. Well, there you have it. Dude. Everyone is trash.
It is unique. Yeah. I think. Yeah. But
yeah.
Like, or sure. At least playing around Bayo burst options are very unique. Like how Ramses was saying, like the 10 frames afterwards. Like it's probably one of the hardest burst options in the game to punish, in my opinion, is ABK.
Which that on minecart.
Oh, and of course, Mr. Blockman.
I feel like we have an except, don't forget minecart.
We had that last time as well with Isidore.
Yeah. Or minecart. Yeah.
Don't forget minecart.
Yeah. I can go. Just real quick. I'm actually glad, Tony, that you brought up Sonic and similarities. I've always had a belief that the Sega characters play somewhat similarly. So, like, I think that a lot of times people don't actually look at that. That's one play both characters. But one of the big things, again, Bayo, when it comes to that character, starting from like if you're playing the character, like it is really big, and this ties into everything that we've about in 20 was just saying too. So you're going to see the overlap, but recognizing that it's better for you to stop a combo early than to go ahead and do this overextension, right? I think that's one of the biggest things, and I think that's where we've been able to see consistency, right? And like I said, mainly you've been seeing a lot of that coming from Bloom, and it's because he's willing to do that. I think a lot of times Bayo's it's overextend City because you feel like you have to, because if you don't get that damage, then what are you doing? Because you're not getting the kills, you're not getting this and that. So I feel like every hit needs to be 50 plus damage or whatever, right? And they can't settle with having, like, when it's so more important, and I think it's important a lot of characters, right? Understanding where you're comboing your opponent towards, what is your reason for comboing there? Outside of the damage, what is the benefit from this route, right? And I think a lot of people need to ask themselves that more. And I think that is especially important when it comes to Bayo. Also, in tandem with playing Bayo, it's always great to learn how to combo without using as little specials as possible, right? I think a lot of Bayos are still getting better at doing a lot of up air ladders. That stuff is very, very good for Bayo. Getting down your fair strings, as it were, and learning things like up tilt, up air bear, right, and where that works, right? Getting an up air bear, or even landing on the platform and getting that extension. Even things like you can do up airs onto a platform, and depending on where the platform is, that you can guaranteed combo into a forward smash, right? There's all these little things there that are really important, and they help a ton because, hey, one of our bigger problems, right, especially against someone who knows the matchup, is going to be with reading the DI and the SDI and doing all this kind of those mix-ups that come up there, right? So knowing how to mitigate that as much as possible is going to be really important for you as a Bayo player. And please learn how characters recover, because Bayo has all the tools to really pressure a ton of characters in that regard, especially if they're not like some obscene, like they're not like a character who just can down and away and stuff like that. A lot of the like general combos like that comes in big, so know that stuff. Outside of that, man, I've said it all throughout the podcast. I really just want to see Bayo characters been a strong character. Obviously, really, once you got all the buffs, that's really where she like came into her own, as it were, and these players are able to utilize those things. But I do see this character as like a top of high tier character. I think that character maybe one day. I think if everyone gets the switch strike stuff down, and it is in a realm where it can actually be consistent. Right now, I still fear that stuff is going to be too hard to do and a little bit too nuanced. But we'll see. There's people like Pop, who is, like I said, I talked to him before. He's a Bayo labber, and he's been doing that in tournament, so that's been pretty sick to see. But yeah, I feel like if that stuff can happen, then this character can really break into top tier. I think without that stuff, this character is not going to be in top tier. But I still think this character is going to be really strong, and it's a fun freaking character, man. Go ahead and pick up the character, check it out. I think a lot of times people, they think the character is a lot harder to play than they are. Like I do think there's like stuff like you definitely have to go in the lab and figure out some stuff, but I sometimes these people act like this character is literally solving quantum physics, and it's not really not that extent. Like, please, all right? So like go ahead, check out the character also for your own benefit, so you are operate if you're going up against the character. Ramses already said the really great standard stuff, like, you know, knowing where to crouch, right? What spacing you need to be for ABK is going to be extremely huge, because if you do not know where to go there, you're going to have a lot of problems. You know, simple things like being able to crouch, it limits your movement in certain ways, but it makes a stalemate. And if the Bayo is overcommitting, then that you can literally on reaction hit them with an up tilt, right? Or hit them with a move that can actually punish them. They don't have time to hit you with a mix up. And then I guess one last thing, and this is for the Bayo players. If it's still there, it works, it's real, and it's something that people should be doing a lot more. There's certain characters where you have to footstool away, then dare. Otherwise, you're going to get the back hit of dare, and you won't get the kill from that side. You'll just get the booty pop up, and like that's it, the booty launcher, as it were. But definitely something to use, because that move can definitely bail you out, especially if you're able to do it on shield and you have that kill come from there. It's pretty good stuff. I definitely think it's something that I'd love to see a lot more. I have been seeing it from ABK tech chases when people do DI down and away, which is really cool. So love to see that. But yeah, footstool out of shield dare is a very strong tool for Bayo, especially because it helps her with one of her greatest weaknesses, obviously being killing. So just food for thought.
Yeah, I also think the way Lima uses it after using like 2, 3, or 4 specials, right? And then someone's chasing down Bayo because like, okay, you've got 4 specials, you're about to land on stage. Let me get like underneath you and shield. So if you swing, then if you swing or witch time, I react. If you air dodge, I react, and I just hit you, right? And then if you do nothing, you land there and I react and get the kill, right? So what Lima will do as you're approaching him, as he's landing, he'll get a footstool and then reset to ledge. Because if you grab the ledge, you wipe all the special leg. And yeah, Bayo's in a very interesting spot. Also very good against item characters. If you don't know, Bayonetta can have an item, do 4 specials or do however many specials that she wants, and she can throw the item before she hits the ground or as she hits the ground, and then it takes away all the special leg as well. Yep. So very good against item characters, and we have a lot of relevant item characters right now, being Diddy, R.O.B, and Peach. And there's also even more item characters, so more power to you. But that's like what we see at the upper echelon. I think right now, I've always had Bayo in that like highish tier area. I always had faith in AB. Yeah, well, not always. Like I mean, after the buffs, yeah. The buffs again, having the double pronged threat is a very big deal. I think even if like I don't know if Bloom and Lima would have the results if they didn't get the buffs. That's like my bigger point.
There's a whole lot of jab kills coming from Bloom's end, so yeah,
yes,
out for both of them, honestly. So yeah,
right. So that was
is a savior.
Very important. I did think she would before the buffs, like a mid, maybe even lower. I might have put her lower just because of I in the beginning of Ultimate, everyone had Smash 4 goggles, so it's like, oh well, she's not doing what she did before, so she sucks, right? So now I think she's still at that high tier. It's like hard for me to put her in a top tier just because she's one of those characters where it's like, yeah, you have this huge array of tools, right? You have this really large toolbox, you can solve a bunch of problems, but is your risk reward better than the other characters that also have these large array of toolboxes, right? And is your risk reward the same as their risk reward? And to me, that's where like the breaking point comes in, where like, when we're talking risk reward, you got to realize like the tippy top of the mountain is Steve doing an up tilt that's plus on block. He can move on the ground while doing this up tilt that's plus on block. And on paper, he should be killing you. But the Steve players are just, they don't even need to go that far. They don't even need to push the character that far. They just get 70 damage and they play advantage state because they don't even have to do that. Why even stress? Why even lab? I'm going to work on my fundamentals, which is like no shots to them, obviously. If you don't need to do something to win, then don't do it, right? Just focus on whatever. But I'm just saying what the tip of the mountain is. That is the reality of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And if like that is a clear top 5 character in my opinion, Steve. Like I have him at 1, but like if you don't have him in top 5, I'm not even going to argue with it, but it's just like that is clearly a overtuned character and is very strong, right? And when we're talking about risk reward and stuff, that's where I think Bayo can kind of fall off, right? Because her risk reward for damage is very high, but her risk reward for getting the kill is not very high. And even in these situations where we're talking about like fair and jab and stuff like that, it's like, well, this jab is coming out like frame 9, like Fox has a frame 8 move out of shield that has incredible range that kills way earlier than jab, right? Like, and I'm just throwing out other random top tiers at this point. So for her to break into the echelon of like top 20, top 10, I think it's a pretty hard argument because of the risk reward. I think it's possible, but I think that toolbox would have to be so strong because your toolbox has to outweigh the risk reward of all the other characters. So your toolbox has to be way more versatile, in my opinion, than the other characters' toolboxes, because your toolbox is very wide, but it like how powerful each one of them are aside from ABK, like the risk reward just doesn't, the power of risk reward doesn't feel like it's on her side. So to me, I think that's where it gets a little tougher to argue her into like top 20, top 10. It obviously gets harder and harder as you go up. I do think I put her around top 30-ish is where I would currently put her.
That's fair.
Right. And yeah, that's my opinion. I do think the game is balanced enough, and if you're a hard-working player and you're talented enough, you can come through and get the results with top 30 characters, or even Incineroar, who I don't even know where to put at the tier list at this moment, but like probably I don't know. I still think Incineroar is a mid tier, but Skyj's out here jamming.
I'm with you,
right?
Charles.
Apple's mid tier. Yeah.
Crazy.
Right. But like, I do think Ultimate, their characters' win conditions are they feel viable, and everything. Like even a mid tier's win condition, it's like, well, if I get that read. And mid tier, like the lower down the tier list, the jankier it gets for the most part, right? Like I kill you at 40 or 50 or whatever. So
for sure,
stuff like that. And obviously like the game just generalizing everything, like jump squats and stuff like that for the most part. So the game's balanced enough to where I don't know, you just don't have to necessarily play a top tier to win. Obviously it helps a lot when you do, but we're seeing success with many different characters, which is really exciting to see. And I really hope that Bloom and Lima keep proving everyone wrong with this character. Maybe the character is even stronger than what we see and know today, right? So really exciting stuff to watch. Ultimate in general, I think, is really fun to watch because you honestly don't know which characters are going to show up in all these top 8s, and it's always fun to watch. But that's going to end it for us here at Coach's Corner. If you guys enjoyed the comment, make sure to slam that like and subscribe. And also, tell us in the comments below how you feel about Bayonetta. Do you think she's strong? Do you think she's weak? Do you think she's top 20, top 10, top 30? Let us know your opinions. We'd love to know. And until next time, class dismissed.